Good evening. Welcome in to the PowerMizzou.com podcast. This is episode number 53 of State of the Tigers, brought to you, as always, by my friend and yours, James Carlton at State Farm Insurance in Webster Groves, Missouri. You can get in touch with James at 314-961-4800. You can check out carltoninsurance.net. His information is going to be rolling across the bottom of the screen throughout this show if you are with us on YouTube. And if you're listening on the podcast, again, I'll say it at the end, but 314-961-4800, carltoninsurance.net, the easiest way to get in touch with James. I am Gabe DeArmond. That is Jarod Hamilton, our football beat writer at Power Mizzou. We are going to dive into plenty of things here. The number 6 Missouri Tigers, the number 24 Boston College Eagles. Just like everybody knew, Jarod, at the beginning of the year, the only game in week 3 between two ranked teams.
It's so funny. It's so funny. Week 3, I've heard, you told me it wasn't like a great slate of games, and that's like now one of the top games of the week. So I think that's funny. And it's just, so my thing is for a team like Boston College, I guess because their win is recent, I guess it happened last Monday when they faced Florida State. How long does the we beat a number 10 team kind of last? I mean, it's got them
Right.
into the top 25, but how long does that kind of say like that's a key win, as the season goes on for them?
It kind of depends on what Florida State does, I guess. But here's the thing. So the reason, I mean, there's a million reasons the top 25 is stupid. And I know everybody listening right now is saying, well, if it's so stupid, then why are you talking about it? Well, because it's what we have to talk about, and people are interested in it. And when your team's number 6 in the country, it's a big deal. But here's the biggest problem with the top 25. Like, there's no set way on how to vote, right? If I were voting on the top 25, personally, I would vote on who's had the best season through 2 weeks. I'm not trying to do predictions and figure out who the best team in the country is and all that. I'm voting based on what have you done on the field. Notre Dame's 1-1. They're not in my top 25. Not only, I mean, they're currently ranked above Northern Illinois. For me, if I'm voting for the top 25, they can't be above Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois just beat them. So, but a lot of people do it like these are the 25 teams I think are the best. So, like, if you had a vote, how would you vote for it? Not the teams, but just kind of general approach.
Uh, Now that you say it, I still like it. It would still be a mix, but yeah, like if you're Notre Dame, you lose to Northern Illinois, whether you're in the top 25 or not, I couldn't put you over Northern Illinois. I'm always if I say this to everybody when it comes to fantasy or any type of sports. If I beat you, I don't care what you've done to someone else. I beat you. Like that's the
At least in week 2.
yeah. Well, it doesn't. Well, if you're Northern Illinois, it doesn't matter when they beat you. I if they play 10 times and Northern Illinois will only win one of those 10, if that's what happened in reality, there is no way that I can be ranked lower, especially when they did it on the road and the refs tried to cheat them.
But I'm saying if we get 6 weeks down the road and Northern Illinois is 2-3 in the MAC and Notre Dame's 7-1, then
No,
Notre
no,
Dame's ranked above
yeah,
Northern
no,
Illinois.
no. I'm just talking about right now,
Yeah.
with the current records the teams have and stuff. I'm not talking about obviously down the line, your win means less if it was kind of just like a fluke. That's something different.
Right. Which is why we don't know what to make of Boston College right now. We're going to get into this. Want to shout out Eric Wilper. Appreciate the super chat. You guys, that's a guaranteed way to get your question on the show. We're going to get to your questions. We usually do that in the second half of the show, but hey, maybe you don't have time. Maybe you want your question on now. Throw out a couple bucks and we'll do it that way. Eric says, is it just me or is half the SEC average to bad? I don't know if we can say that yet. Like, I don't know for sure that Kentucky's bad. I don't know for sure that South Carolina's any good. But yeah, I think in general, like just mathematically, at least half the league is generally average to bad, right?
Yeah, and I was about to say when I'm thinking about it, so we obviously got 6 of the top 7 teams in the our SEC teams, so that's 6 teams right there for you. I feel like LSU and Oklahoma, they're around that 15. They're both, I think Oklahoma's 15, LSU is 16. We've seen, we know game day is going to South Carolina versus Georgia, and I know the Gamecocks aren't
Versus
ranked,
LSU, yeah.
or it's versus LSU. My
South
bad.
Carolina, LSU.
Yeah, but I mean, they've got some exciting players, in South Carolina and stuff like that. Arkansas played better than anybody thought they would versus, Oklahoma State. And so, you got about 8 to 10 teams where you're saying like, that's all right. I guess South Carolina, we don't know if they're gonna start being on that good half of the league or not. That's to
Right.
be determined. Arkansas, it'd probably be good if they are average, for their sake. But I feel like not even a lot of leagues have half the teams being, average. Some have one or two where
Right.
it's all right, and then it's terrible after that. So
Yeah, the SEC has more good teams than anybody else in college football. That's not questionable. But like I've always said, even in the SEC, you can go 7-5, maybe even 8-4 just by beating teams that are average at best, right? Like let's go through Missouri's schedule. You beat average teams, you're 4-0 in the non-conference. We know that. So then Vanderbilt, that's an average at best team.
yeah,
Mississippi State, average at best team. Auburn, average at best team.
yeah,
Arkansas, average at best team.
yeah,
South Carolina, probably average at best team. I've got you at 9-3, and you haven't beaten anybody really that I would consider a good team. And that's
right,
not a commentary on Missouri's schedule. There's a lot of teams that are like that. All you've got to do to get to 8 wins is just beat the mediocre stuff on your schedule. And
right,
then the difference between the teams that win 8 and the teams that win 10 or 11 is those teams that win 10 or 11 go beat somebody who's actually good, right? Why did Missouri get to 10 last year? Because they beat Kansas State, which was actually pretty good, and they beat Tennessee, which was actually pretty good. The rest of their wins, they didn't beat anybody else any good all year, and that's okay. That's not an insult to anybody. That's how you get to 10 wins in a college football season. You get 2 big wins, and then you beat all the average teams you should beat.
right. And then again, in the games they lost, had a much better chance than LSU, obviously in the LSU game to
Right.
win. And in the Georgia one, I don't know if it completely felt like they were going to win, but how they lost was
I legitimately, when they were driving before Brady threw the pick, I thought they were going to win that game.
Mhm. Okay. I don't know. The
Maybe I
Georgia,
was caught up in the moment.
I thought for what happened that day, I think it was at a 9-point loss. I want to say it
Yeah,
was,
it
it
ended up
was
something like
like that's a really good showing for Mizzou, considering all that other stuff you said about who they beat and the other loss they had was really more of a 3-point loss. I don't count the pick six at the end. Like I know it
that.
happened
Right,
to make a
right,
10-point loss, but yeah, that's how you get in a top 10, like you said.
right. And this is the point, right? I think the SEC has 6, maybe 7 maybe even 8 teams that I would classify as good, right? I mean, Georgia, we're going to agree, good team, right?
Georgia, what Texas,
Texas, very
Bama,
good team. Bama, Tennessee. I
Tennessee,
think Ole Miss is there.
Ole
I
Miss,
think Missouri's there.
6. Who's the
LSU, maybe. I don't know if they're there yet.
LSU and Oklahoma? I think
Right.
LSU.
LSU and Oklahoma are next in line for me.
Yeah, I think LSU is a smidge better than Oklahoma, and they will play each other, I believe, later this season. So like you kind of get to see where they rank out because yeah, they seem like on that outside, like the outside looking in type of thing as far as being one of the like top teams in the league or just getting into that bracket we were just talking about.
Well, and that's the problem with being in the SEC, right? Eric said, OU is staring 6-6 right in the face. And that's definitely a possibility, especially the way they played against Houston. But like OU could actually be a good team and be 7-5. That's the problem with playing in this league where there are 7 or 8 good teams versus, I mean, if you play in the Big Ten is the second best league in the country, right? How many really good teams do we think they have? We agree Ohio State is really good, right?
Ohio State, and then I feel like
Oregon
currently,
should be. I
see, that's what I was
think
about to say.
they're good. I mean, they're
I
at least good. I don't know if they're elite, but they're at least good.
The way we just kind of had it like a top 7 for the SEC and then the ones looking in, I think you have to make a small little space in between that. I think Oregon's better than LSU and Oklahoma, but then they're not living up as of right now. It's only 2 weeks in. They're not. They've been touted within the preseason as being with Ohio State. I don't think they are. And then you got teams like
Not right now.
Oregon or Penn State, which feel like they're in the Oklahoma LSU bracket to me. I
Could be.
they're and James Franklin in big games. I like James Franklin, but I mean, we gotta tell the truth. When it comes to
Right.
those big time games, and then Michigan,
I mean,
I'm done on Michigan. I've
right
seen.
now, USC looks like the third best team in the Big
Oh
Ten.
yeah. I do like USC. I forgot who they just mopped up the other day, but it wasn't.
Utah State. Yeah.
Yeah,
But point being, the Big Ten's the second best team in the country, and there are three-ish teams
yep.
we would classify as at that level, maybe. So in the Big Ten, it is much easier to get to 10-2 than it is in the SEC. That's why the SEC is good. And yet the SEC still has 5 or 6 teams that you look at and go, well, yeah, you should beat them 8 times out of 10.
Correct.
But that kind of leads to one of the things that I wanted to talk about, which is the playoff and all that. You mentioned I think we mentioned Notre Dame, right? So Notre Dame loses to Northern Illinois, and I want to preface all this by saying a million things are going to happen, right? Like literally 3 weeks ago, nobody had Missouri BC as the only ranked matchup, so most of this probably doesn't matter by the end of the season. But as long as we're talking hypotheticals, let's say for the sake of argument, Notre Dame runs the table. Means they beat Florida State, they beat USC, and they beat a bunch of crap. They go 11-1. They lost to Northern Illinois. You're
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the committee room. What do you say when Notre Dame comes up?
Again, because a million things could happen. If they run the table, I mean, I could see them still being a top 12 team. And we talked about this right after the game happened. It's Notre Dame. And if we'd all be lying if we're not going to say branding and all that stuff, it doesn't matter. Hey, if Notre Dame runs the table and beats everybody they need to beat, and they get some good wins in there, I'm not saying I
But
would, but considering a million different things that could happen, and it's Notre Dame, I could see them finding some way to get them in there. And then what if you have Notre Dame as like the 11th seed, and you can run a underdog story? You know what I mean? You know what I'm
right.
saying?
So that's the thing, though. These are two different questions. I think the committee would put 11-1 Notre Dame in. To
Mm-hmm.
me, Notre Dame's done. Like if I'm in that committee room and you bring up Notre Dame and you say they went 11-1, they've won 10 in a row, they won their last 8 games by 21 points. I say I don't care. They lost to Northern Illinois. They're disqualified. Unless Northern Illinois turns out to go 12-0 and be the G5 representative in the playoff, then cool, I'll listen. Other than that, they're done. And here's why. All that stuff we just talked about, the SEC, right? Let's say Missouri loses to Alabama and Texas A&M. Notre Dame runs the table. Who had the better season?
Missouri.
It's not even close. It's not even a consideration in my mind. But college football has always shown that they care about the number of wins. It's why nobody schedules anybody any good, because there's no reward for it. So I'm going to look up, all right, I'm going to look up Tennessee's schedule. So give me 1 second. Okay, Tennessee plays the following team. They've already beaten NC State. They're at Oklahoma, at Arkansas, home against Florida, home against Alabama, home against Kentucky, home against Mississippi State, at Georgia, home against UTEP, at Vanderbilt. So let's say, for the sake of argument, they lose at Georgia, they lose at home against Alabama, and they lose at Oklahoma. And let's say Oklahoma goes on and is about where they are right now, which is 15-20, whatever. Tennessee's 9-3 with that. Their 3 losses are to Alabama, Georgia, and Oklahoma. They've beaten NC State. Who had the better season, 9-3 Tennessee or 11-1 Notre
Uh, the reason why that's tough, and I may go Notre Dame, is Notre Dame would have a ranked win over A&M and USC at the end of the season. If they're like we think they are, then that's something. If Tennessee loses
Dame?
to,
Do we think A&M's going to be a ranked win at the end of the year?
that's the caveat. That's the
Yeah,
caveat.
I
But then,
mean, so,
but,
but that's my point. Is 9-3 Tennessee? It's a legitimate conversation. Is that a better year than 11-1 Notre Dame? 9-3 Tennessee's not getting in the playoff. 11-1 Notre Dame doesn't deserve to be in
the playoff. Yeah, I do think
they just don't.
I think there's still
I mean, I agree with you. I think they will be.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going 11.
I don't know. It really depends how high USC climbs up. Because if you can, let me see where that game is at US.
It's at USC the last game of the year.
You can, especially if USC is hot, and we're talking about how that's because it's the last game of the year, and at that point they'd be winning, 9 games in a row or whatever. What's the last thing people saw? Them win 9 games and then go on the road and
get in. I'm just saying they wouldn't deserve it.
I hear you. I hear you.
I don't disagree with your point that they will get in. So Freeway Jarod brings up a point, right? But why? Why does ranked? We're just talking about how stupid ranked. Like all these rankings were just off last season. Why does ranked at the time matter?
Wait, when we were just talking about Missouri, did Kansas State finish the season ranked? I really don't remember for last year.
I think they did. But I know they finished the regular season ranked because they were like 23 or 24 in the college football playoff rankings, which gave Missouri another top 25 win.
Okay. Because I always remember after there was a period of time, I feel like that they weren't ranked for a few weeks in the middle of the season
right
after that loss. So I was about to say, they were ranked and then they fell out. But okay, if they were ranked at the end of the year, yeah, I get
you. And to me, it is about the end of the year because this week is a perfect example. Boston College is coming to town. They're ranked number 24 in large part because they beat number 10 or number 6 or whatever, Florida State.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Florida State might just suck out loud. Like they've got a chance to end this season 6-6. So if they do, nobody's propping that up at the end of the year as a good win. Like just because the media thinks it's going to be a good win, like literally all year long, people are complaining about the media and they're biased. They don't know this. We can't hold up what the media picks teams to be in August is mattering. Like we don't know. Look at what's already happened this season. We don't know.
I agree, but then if your argument changes and says the same thing about like a team that we know is actually good, like a Georgia, Alabama, and stuff like I don't know. It feels like something changed. It feels like it's not consistent.
Like Georgia and Alabama, those are. Look, if you beat Georgia next week and Georgia ends this season 8-4 and number 23 in the country, cool. It was a good win, but it wasn't an elite win because a bunch of other people beat them, right? Like had Missouri beat Georgia last year, it's the best win in college football because nobody else did it. That's why it's a good win. Had Missouri beat Georgia and then Georgia loses 3 in a row, that Georgia win doesn't look as good. I'm just saying judge it at the end.
Well, I still think it looks pretty good because it would have been on the road versus the number 1 team. And if at the time I beat you and this is your ranking, especially when it's a road win, it has to count for something. It does dampen a little bit, but I still think, yeah, you end, Georgia's streak of games because whatever, there was 27, 28 games by the time they played Missouri, like wins in a row.
Yeah.
No, that means something. And if they fall off after, you're the one who ended the streak. That matters. That still matters. Obviously, it could be boosted if they win everything else, but I think that's still important.
Right, but it wouldn't have been what it was had Georgia
picked it back up and
gone 11-1, and Missouri was the only team to beat them. There's a difference, and this all to tie this back to Missouri. Robert says, "I'm glad Mizzou was ranked number 6, and we should have been." Look, I don't care where Missouri should have been ranked at the end of last year, but this brings up a point. Like right now, the preseason polls are benefiting Missouri without question. Starting the season in the playoff discussion because you were ranked number, what was Missouri, 11 preseason, I think?
11. Yeah.
Okay. So when you start the season number 11, you are on everybody's mind to start, right? Like if you go by what's been done on the field, who has proven more on the football field so far, Missouri or Boston College? I mean, it's probably Boston College.
I was about to say, but dang, 89-0. That's pretty.
Right,
That's a pretty good show.
but
Yes,
you get my point. Like
yes,
Missouri hasn't beaten anybody.
yes.
So the reason Missouri is number 6 is not really because of anything they've done in the first 2
It's
weeks.
because
It's
everybody
they
else around
started number 11.
They started number 11, and the teams around them have shifted a little bit.
Right, and BC is 2-0. They have an 84-13 scoring margin. They beat a team that at the time was number 10. Again, we can discuss whether that means anything or not. But BC is barely in one poll and not in the other poll. Why? Because they didn't start there. Missouri didn't get in the polls last year until I think they got in after they beat K-State. Then they lost LSU and fell because they were not ranked when they played Kentucky. So, because nobody thought Missouri was good at the beginning of the year, it took like 7 weeks for Missouri to get in on a consistent basis. Whereas this year, let's say Missouri goes 4-0, loses Game 5 at A&M, like they did last year. Game 5 was LSU. They lose Game 5 to Texas A&M. They're still going to be ranked like 14th because of where they started. And so even though the polls don't matter, they still really matter and impact everything that happens in college football. Missouri is benefiting from that this year.
Right. And I think, to be honest, the media, which is funny because that's us still, but the ones who are picking on this poll, they like to be right. And they like to say, to start the season, our picks were as close as the finished product at the end. So, yeah, if a team I had number 10, they slip up and then they get back, I can, because remember where they started, and then you can start making the arguments and stuff like that. So I definitely get how the preseason polls right now are a benefit to Mizzou.
And it's really in everything. I saw just before we came on, I saw a clip from a podcast that Troy Aikman was on, and they asked him about Brock Purdy. And he said if Brock Purdy was a first-round draft pick, we'd talk about how he's a really good player. Because he was a seventh-round draft pick, we talk about he's limited, and it's a nice story. But you talk about him differently. Why did most of Missouri's fan base want Sam Horn to start the Kansas State game last year? It wasn't because they'd ever seen Sam Horn do anything good on a football field. It was because he was a 4-star recruit. And I'm not blaming people for this. This is human nature. Like, I'm not trying to shame anybody that thought that at the time. My point is, all of our perceptions are formed on these predictions and prognostications. And like, I'm just going to tell you guys, Jarod, how many college football games did you watch last week?
This is part of my column. I probably only got to see the only one I seen full was Texas versus Michigan, and then I seen a couple parts of other games, maybe a couple other.
Yeah, games. Like I flipped on Texas, Michigan. I got bored by it, so I think I watched most of Oklahoma State, Arkansas. I took a nap, and then I came over to the stadium, and by the time we left the press box, it was 1:30, and every game was over. I saw one football game outside of Missouri. Other than that, I'm just reading box scores. It's like, and I watched a highlight show. But the point is, all these rankings and stuff that we get, and I say we because the media does it, the fans do it, everybody does it, that everybody gets up in arms about, and that shape the college football season. Like, it's crazy to me. Even though it's nice to say the poll doesn't really mean anything because the committee's going to get together and do their own rankings, but like, what are the chances that when the first college football playoff rankings come out, that there's some team that is unranked in the polls that they have in the top 12? It ain't very good.
Yeah, no, that's not. The AP is pretty much a guide.
Yep. So it's just interesting, and like, I know it's hypocritical for two media people to sit here and say a media poll was stupid, but I don't vote for it, and if I did, it would still be stupid Like
Yeah.
one of the well, there's two reasons I don't vote for it. First, nobody's ever asked me to vote for it. Second, like I don't know enough. I would be an ill-informed
That's
AP voter.
that's why the SEC Media Day polls are. I hate them so much.
Oh, they're so bad.
I don't get it. How am I voting on players or teams that I haven't seen? I don't know anything about their off season unless it's something major. And if I do, it's probably one, two players, maybe a coach or something like that. I don't know who's on their schedule. I'm not evaluating who they're playing like I'm evaluating who Missouri might play or something like that. I don't know all of that. So I've always thought this doesn't make sense that everybody votes on different teams, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So again, it's all benefiting Missouri. So this year, hey, God love the polls and all that.
Wait, Gabe, can you put up the comment by Tad? That's an interesting one.
If I can find it. Yeah. Oh yeah. Here.
So Tad Danner says, let everyone play 5 games, then rank them.
I agree. I don't think polls should start till everybody's played at least 4 games.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that one.
But you know what? I mean, here's why that's never going to happen. Because the preseason poll gets clicks. The TV, like I've heard Dan Wetzel say this a million times on their podcast. The stupidest thing college football does is do a show every week to give you playoff rankings leading up to. They shouldn't do that. They should just give you the top 12 at the end of the year, because all they do is set themselves up to look stupid by doing things like, well, TCU's been number 4 all along, but now magically they're 6. Or Florida State's been number 3 all along, but now magically they're 5, right? If they don't do those shows leading up to that, then there's nothing to complain about. But they do it because people watch and advertisers pay for it, and it's entertainment. And like, I agree, we shouldn't have polls until October, but it's very unrealistic.
Yeah, I don't know. That's good. And also the billing you can do for the games leading up to that. Number 1 Georgia versus number 7 whoever, you know what I mean? Like that, I think that matters a little bit in billing and commercializing the product.
Exactly. That's what it comes back to. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about this game. I'm going to talk with Kevin Stone from EagleAction.net later this week, and we'll have our opponent preview show. But let's talk about Mizzou BC. Did you watch much of Florida State BC?
Yeah, I watched that game.
Or have you watched? You did.
I did.
Just here's what I still don't know. Was that game about BC being pretty good, or was that game about Florida State being a train wreck right now?
It's a little of both. Probably a little bit more towards Florida State, just pooping the bed, so to speak. You know, DJ, you not making some of those throws, some very easy throws. Florida State, every time they did something or even had a little momentum, they would shoot themselves in the foot, like that penalty. I know a lot of people seen that unnecessary rough, like it was like a personal foul after the play. Offensive lineman comes over, pushed DN flops, and then he starts grittying after because he drew a flag that Florida State definitely didn't need. It was a lot about Florida State messing it up, but I'm always like, you have to play who's on your schedule, and you have to, if you're Boston College, you have to beat them still. You still have to do your part in the win. Like a team could, I guess you can't think of too many, but you've seen games where a team should definitely lose and they still pull it out because the other team, they can't capitalize on those mistakes. So that's where I give Boston College their credit.
Yeah, I do think BC deserves credit because the other thing about that game, it wasn't close. Like, there was no time in the second half I thought Florida State was going to win that game. I think 2 things happened in that game. I think, yes, Florida State is bad, but I also think Bill O'Brien, who is, I mean, let's give the man his flowers. He went to the NFL playoffs with Deshaun Watson. That right now looks like, I understand it was Deshaun Watson when Deshaun Watson was a good player. I get that. But it sounds better to just say he was.
Well, I want to, so he was coaching the Texans. I can't remember if he was there when they had Matt Schaub and they were going to, like, they won the AFC South like 2 or 3 years in a row. I can't remember if that was him.
I don't remember.
But yeah, you're right. He did do some work with Deshaun and those Texans.
Yeah, I mean, he went to the NFL playoffs. What he did at Penn State is highly underrated. I mean, he took Penn State over at a time when, Look, it was a very real possibility
crazy.
that they were entering the dark ages, and he brought it back, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. So my point is, he's a good coach. It looked like he just watched Georgia Tech's film against Florida State and said, "Well, all we got to do is hand the ball off right in the middle, and they can't stop it. We're going to win the game," and that's what they did. And Bill O'Brien deserves credit for that, right? So. I won't say this very often, but I think my biggest concern in this game from a Missouri standpoint is the guy on the other sideline. Like I think he's a very good football coach. And like that team's not you're gonna have to beat Boston College. His team is not gonna come in here and beat itself.
All right. And we said the last couple of games, the more I think about it, it's not, but we were saying like facing Murray State and then facing Buffalo, you're starting to ramp up to maybe some stuff you would see versus Boston College, but those games are so you can't tell enough. It like in one way we're like 89-0 pitch and shutouts, but in another way I'm just thinking like this is a major leap up. Like the is it Castellanos?
Castellanos, yeah. It looks like it should be Castellanos, but it's not.
So Castellanos, like, I don't think he's the greatest passer in the world, but the things ad-libbing and being more of a dynamic threat than CJ Agbana was last week in the option game, zone read and stuff like that. Like that's a thing. Like the first thing I'm thinking is, will Missouri be dedicating a spy to him? Like, is it that serious? I'm not sure yet. I haven't looked into it, but like, if he keeps running on them, at what point do you? And I'm not saying he will, but if that becomes the case, like, I don't think those were things Missouri was thinking about these first couple of weeks with Missouri and Buffalo.
I mean, I watched. So Thomas Castellanos has thrown. He's 19 of 26 for 340 yards, 6 touchdowns, no picks. He has run 15 times for 81 yards. Like, I think Castellanos is a decent running quarterback. I did not watch that game and think he can take over a Power 4 football game with his legs. I think he and Brady Cook are very similar running threats as quarterbacks. Like, they're good. It's a part of their game. But I don't think they can go beat a good team. Like, I watched Brad Smith here. The other teams knew he was running and it didn't matter, right? I saw Vince Young. I mean, there was nothing you could do with him. Even when I watched Vandy, Virginia Tech, I thought, well, Diego Pavia can just take off and beat somebody. Like, the reason they win a game is because he can run the football. I don't think that way about Thomas Castellanos. And I don't think that way about Brady Cook. Like, other things have to happen. That's not going to be the number one reason you win the game.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you reading his stats out kind of makes me. So he's rushing about 7 or 8 times a game. Like, he's not trying to. They're not overdoing it with him. And a lot of those runs, again, was broken down pass play. Maybe some of the receivers aren't getting open, and he's making a move, and he has the speed to make a play more so than, I guess, necessarily design runs from her. So that makes sense.
Right. And now I'm looking at the box score against Duquesne. I'm going to assume he didn't run very much there, but hang on just a second. He ran one time for 8 yards against Duquesne. So he ran 14 times for 73 yards against Florida State. So, he does do it, but he's good at it, but I don't think he's great at it. I don't think that's something that, like, look, if you have to get to a point where you tell Khalil Jacobs, go spy him, then okay. But I don't think Missouri should have to get to that point.
Yeah. And we haven't even got the game notes yet, so I'm just going off of what I saw versus Florida State or stuff like that. But that makes sense. And I do.
So
okay.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, as far as passing wise and stuff like that, I'm again very impressed with like Missouri's secondary. So I wonder if he has to run more because he cannot get the passes off, whether he wants to or not. I wonder if that becomes a factor. But yeah, maybe not the threat that he was versus Florida State per se.
I think we are going to find out more about Missouri's defense. defense. Because look, it's impressive to give up 0 points in the numbers they've had, right? But Thomas Castellanos, a power 4 quarterback. Treshaun Ward was at Kansas State last year, Florida State before that. He's a power 4 football player at running back. Is it Jaden McGowan, the receiver that transferred from Vanderbilt? They have legitimate players. Missouri hasn't played a legitimate player yet. I mean, there's not one guy on that Buffalo roster that you looked at and said, "Oh, that's a guy that could be in the power 4 doing damage."
Well, not in this game. They did have a linebacker, but there was.
But I'm talking offensive. I'm talking like skill position player.
Oh no. So yeah.
So so we're going to find out more about it. Like, don't be shocked when Missouri actually allows points this week. I expect Boston College to score at some point.
Yeah.
The way I put it, I think on Saturday night, I said Missouri has been like running on a flat surface the first 2 weeks, right? Like you're just kind of cruising along, flat road, going at your own pace. It's easy. Now they're hitting an incline. It's not like a mountain. It's not the biggest incline, but the next 2 weeks you're actually running uphill a little bit. It's harder than the first 2 weeks were.
I agree. Makes sense.
All right, so let's hit some of the questions. Before we do that, I do want to remind you again, information's been running across the bottom of the screen throughout, but we want you to get in touch with our friend James Carlton at State Farm Insurance. Check him out at carltoninsurance.net. Give him a call, 314-961-4800. If you tell him you heard about his agency on Power Mizzou, he is going to make a $25 donation to the NIL efforts. Just for giving you a quote. You don't even necessarily have to go through and buy the policy. We hope you do. But just for giving a quote, he's going to donate $25 to the NIL efforts. So want you to do that. Want to also remind everybody, this is our PSA. The game is on SEC Network this weekend, not SEC Network Plus, regular SEC Network. So if you get that, you can watch it 11:45. So want to get to some of the comments and some of the questions here that we've had throughout the show. Todd Alexander says, if Mizzou has the top 30-ish defense by the end of the season, what's the ceiling for this team?
It's somewhere in the playoff. I mean, I think
look,
top 30 defense, to be honest. I think
the ceiling doesn't change for me based on stats or where the ceiling for this team is 12-0. They don't play a game they can't win.
I agree. Now, are they going? Is it likely to go 12-0? I don't know about that one, but yes, every game, including Alabama, is a winnable game for sure.
Right, likely is different than the ceiling.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if I told you this or I told somebody else this. Maybe this is dumb on my part, but after walking out of Faroe on Saturday night, after knowing what else had happened in college football, I now think Missouri should go
11. Come on, Gabe, join the team, man. I was trying to get you hip early on, but yeah, yes, everything around them, it's just, I don't know, from 11 to 6 in basically 2 weeks. And they haven't done anything.
Right, because while they are doing what they should, so many other people are not doing what they should.
Right, that's what I mean.
Let's run through BC. I think BC is better than I thought they were at the beginning of the year. I do not think they should come in here and beat Missouri. Do you agree with that?
Of course. I don't. I still think it's Missouri double digits in this one.
I think Vandy is probably better than I thought they were at the beginning of the year. They should not come in here and beat Missouri.
Correct.
Texas A&M, they better or worse than you thought they were 3 weeks ago?
They're always what I think they are. They're, like you said, they're the Chargers. They will always be hype and 8-4. So could they win it, at home versus Missouri? Yes. Do I think they will? No.
The chances that Missouri loses that game, in my opinion, are lower than they were 2 weeks ago. Yes. I watched.
I'm not sold on the what's his name? The Wigman.
Yeah, I watched him go 12 for 30 against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'm not sold. I'm not sold.
They scored fewer points at home against Notre Dame than Northern Illinois scored at Notre Dame. So they're worse, I think, than I thought they were before the season. Auburn, They better or worse than you thought they were before the season?
I mean, to me, they're kind of in line with what I was thinking. Maybe a little bit worse because did they officially lose to Cal? I can't remember, but
Yeah, they lost 21-14.
I remember at some point you was telling me they were losing. But yeah,
Peyton Thorne threw 4 picks.
Yeah. Oh well, they're even worse. So yeah, I'm thinking
Right. Like Hugh Freeze told reporters today that the backup is going to get a lot of reps in practice. He's thinking about a quarterback change. That team doesn't have a quarterback. I picked Missouri to lose that game in my, hey, got to pick an upset somewhere. No way I think Missouri loses that game now.
this is it wasn't really close to me. Auburn is a average. We're talking about average teams earlier, average at best. So 8 and
Right.
4 to me was
So
always
if you're one of those 6, if you're one of those 6 teams with playoff hopes, that's one of those games you have to win.
Definitely though. You can't be having no slip ups. But I know what you were saying. Like I don't think you really thought Auburn would win, but again, to the upset narrative thing, and because that happens, I get why you picked them, but I don't see it with them.
I just thought Hugh Freeze with another year, I thought they would be improved. They don't have a quarterback. I don't think they're improved. UMass, I don't care if they're better than we thought they were. That doesn't count. We're not even going to talk about that game the week it's played. Alabama, better or worse than you thought they were 2 weeks ago?
They're kind of still on par with where they are. They haven't given me a reason to think, oh, you're worse. So
Right. They absolutely embarrassed Western Kentucky, and then they beat. See, this is a good example of like what we're saying, not seeing games and just voting based on box scores. If you look down and you see Bama 42, USF 16, you think, oh, that was easy. That was not easy. That was a game entering the fourth quarter. Like Alabama kind of went nuts late to extend the lead, but that was a losable game entering the fourth quarter. But yeah, Bama's about what I thought they were. Oklahoma. Has your opinion changed on Oklahoma?
I haven't been. I mean, I guess they're playing better than I thought in my head. I mean,
Well, they were awful this week.
who did they play?
I mean, they beat Houston 16-12.
Yeah.
I mean, Brent Venables said in his post-game interview, we should have lost.
Oh, okay. Well,
You know?
I was gonna say, I think it's really just their ranking for me. I didn't expect them to be this. I think they are. They just haven't hit that part of the schedule yet where I feel like I can really answer that. So I don't. Who did they play week 1? Did you know? I don't.
They beat the hell out of somebody really bad. Temple, I
Oh,
think.
okay. Well, then I guess they're just what their number is right now for me. I really don't know enough. I feel like, but
Like, I think they'll be better than they were last weekend, but they have played worse than they expected to play. South Carolina.
I think they're. I mean, beating Kentucky's cool on the road and beating them down like I do, and they've got some dudes out there, but we'll see. LSU is a good test. We'll see. Like they don't even have to win the game. I just need to see what they're doing against some really good comp.
South Carolina is also a week removed from getting lucky to beat Old Dominion. Like, I think South Carolina on the right, like, I think they could, if I had to go back and you
So
tell
you're
me there's a
upset.
game you're not seeing that Missouri's going to lose, maybe that's the one I pick. I don't think they lose it, but,
Yeah, that could.
I don't know if South Carolina is better than I thought they were, but I think their ceiling is higher than I thought it was, if that makes sense.
Correct.
Mississippi State, they're absolutely as bad as I thought they were.
I don't know what they did. Did they win though?
They got beat by
They got beat.
Arizona State. Yeah, and like not just beat. I mean, the final score was 30-23, but they got their brains beaten. I mean, that was not that close a game.
Oh well.
So they're not a factor.
Mississippi State has joined where Vandy is in my mind, or what Vandy has been the last few years. Just kind of like bottom feeders.
So we're in game 12. Arkansas is the only team on Missouri's schedule that I would confidently tell you I think they're better than I thought they were 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
I mean, I watched that game. They've got some guys.
Missouri still will beat them down, but yeah,
I mean, Jaquinton Jackson can play. Taylor Green, he's going to make some mistakes, but he can make some plays. Bobby Petrino, look, whatever you think about him, he can coach some offense. Now, look, they don't know how to finish games. They still have the same problem they had last year. But
At least they're in
my
games.
opinion of what's that?
At least they're in games, though. Like to
Right. Well, but that's the thing. They were in games last year. They had a 3 week stretch where they lost to Alabama, LSU, and I forget somebody else by a combined 13 points. Like they were pretty close to being a good team. They just couldn't win any of them. And then they quit. So look, they did it again against Oklahoma. I mean, they did. That team didn't want to be at that game against Missouri.
Sure
That was
didn't.
one of the poorest efforts I've ever seen on an SEC football field.
Sure didn't.
Right. So my point is, look, if Arkansas drops a couple more close ones, same thing could very well happen. I just think Arkansas, my opinion of them today is higher than it was at the beginning of the season. But I mean, we just ran through that whole thing, and the only one we both agree we definitely have a higher opinion of is Arkansas. So the schedule set, well, I mean, BC and Vandy, but we still don't view them as true threats to Missouri. So while the schedule, I think, by degree of difficulty, by strength of schedule, has theoretically gotten harder, I feel better about Missouri's chances to win 11 games than I felt at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, no, I get why. And again, it helps that everybody else is messing up. I know that it doesn't have anything to do with their record, but I'm just really thinking playoff wise, like 10-2, the way we're viewing 10-2 3 weeks ago or whatever for Missouri, and how that 10-2 and the chance of getting into the playoff is much better than it was then. 11-1, I feel pretty good. It's just making me feel more confident in what I was saying earlier. I don't know if I'm leaning that over to 12-0 yet. We got to see in between time how I feel about them possibly like winning on the road, at Alabama, but feel really good about 11-1 right now.
Yeah, like again, I just think it seems more likely to me than it seemed 2 weeks ago. And now look, hey, every team has an off day, right? If Saturday is Missouri's off day and they come out and they need a field goal to beat Boston College 23-21, like we might have a different conversation next week.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where I'm at, because here's what I want to see out of this weekend. This team has not taken one stressful snap this season, right? Like, I mean, you knew snap one, Missouri was winning the first two games, like, and nothing even freaky happened, like where they fell behind 6-0 or something. Like, there's not been 1 second of stress during the Missouri football game. So how do they react if there is this weekend? And I'm not even talking like major stress. I'm talking like you're in the third quarter, your offense hasn't really gotten going, you turned it over once, you busted a coverage, and you're down 17-14 with 6 minutes left in the third quarter. Like that starts to get a little bit stressful, and they haven't been in that position yet. So I'm not saying they won't react well. I'm just saying we haven't seen them have to do it.
Right. And even, I won't even call it stress, but even in like that first quarter when they're up 3-0, they got a chance to make it 6-0, they missed a field goal, and you're just kind of wondering, like, the offense, it was nothing that Buffalo was doing, and it wasn't even a big deal of thinking about the offense. It's just like, when is it going to start clicking for them? And then the second quarter started, and then it started clicking for them, and they got 3 straight touchdown drives after the 2 field goal attempts. So, yeah, they haven't had a thought of this team is doing X, Y, and Z, and so now how can we combat that?
What happens sooner? Corey Flagg starts over Chuck Hicks, or Josh Manning starts over Mookie Cooper?
Corey Flagg starts over Chuck Hicks. The way Drink talks about Mookie and how consistent he is, and he is, when he has the opportunity and his veteran leadership, I think that's really important to him. And so it makes sense. And while Josh Manning and Daniel Blood are very talented, they're still really young. And I think that's important in conference play. With Corey Flagg, he's a baller. He was balling at Miami, Florida, and he's got that experience as well. So he's probably got more experience than Chuck Hicks, actually, even though Chuck Hicks has been in for, like, game-wise, if you count the games, I think Corey may have an edge because he's got to play like 50 career games, and he's played a lot at Florida, and Chuck Hicks has missed time with injuries and stuff like that. So I think they could make the switch to Corey Flagg if they wanted to.
I'm not sure either one of them starts.
Well, for this question though,
But no, I know, but my point is going to be, I'm not sure Flag or Manning ever actually is the guy that's on the field for the first snap of the game. I think by the end of the season, Corey Flag will have more snaps played than Chuck Hicks,
mm,
but I don't know if he starts. With Manning and Cooper, I agree with you. I mean, Mookie Cooper, outside of offensive lineman and Brady Cook, Mookie Cooper has the most offensive snaps on the team. They love him. They love what I mean. Look, the production doesn't match the other guys, but whatever it is about what he does, they really like him. I don't see Mookie not starting,
correct.
and not getting starters reps.
And I think it because he doesn't have the stats yet, and because they haven't really been tested as much, I think Mookie is forgotten until it's important. Because, like, maybe Josh Manning or Daniel Blood, they have a few reps where, not so good reps. Maybe they drop a pass or something like that. And then people start wondering, I don't know, is this a moment where a veteran like Mookie Cooper would have made that decision? Or would he have done this? Would he have done that? I feel like it's small little things that you forget about until the moment happens. And then you're just like, well, where's Mookie or something like that.
Right. Yeah. And like he just look, coaches love guys that are dependable, right?
Yes,
They
that's
will play
great.
they will play a guy with a lower ceiling if he has a higher floor because they know whatever I ask him to do, he's going to be in the right place and he's going to do it. Coaches want a guy who's always going to be where he's supposed to be, as opposed to a guy who might make a great play one out every 4 snaps, but the other 3 snaps, you don't know what the hell he's doing, right? Mookie's very dependable.
Correct. And
Oh,
being dependable when you've got the talent around them is even better because they don't even expect to just do your 111 as what they be saying. So that's big for why Mookie's going to continue to start probably.
yeah. John Parker, Luther is so valuable because he draws defenders away from others. We talked about this during the game on Saturday night. I said before the season, I don't think Luther gets to 1,200 yards like he did last year. I think his value is that he allows things like Theo Weiss 13 for 149 to happen. Is that he opens up Brett Norfleet or opens up lanes for Carroll and Noel by drawing a lot of attention. I think he'll have a good year. I don't think the sheer numbers might be what they were last
Yeah, don't I can't remember what I said. I just know I said he's not going to break Jeremy Macklin's not the single season mark, but the one under that, which is 1260. I said he wouldn't get above that. I wonder. There's still enough time for him to get 1,000 for sure,
year.
but it's not. It's again kind of to what you said. It's not because he can't do it. Teams actually know what he can do now, and so if anybody on this offense is seeing double teams, it will be him. Everybody else will be one-on-one though, and that's why you get, like you said, the Theo Weiss type games.
Yeah. And hey, look, well, I would expect Luther to play this week. I mean, we'll talk to Drake
Yeah,
tomorrow, but I don't see any reason he wouldn't. I kind of want to finish here because I'm going to ask Drinkwitz about this tomorrow. Mike says I think this could be a statement like or a game like the Tennessee game where Drink really wants to make a statement. So somebody posted a clip on our board. I don't know what podcast it was from, but Drink called the loss to BC 3 years ago one of the lowest moments of his career.
dang.
I want to know why. Like, I don't know why. It was just kind of yeah, I mean, you wanted to win, but like they were average, you were average. That season didn't really end up going anywhere. I want to know what he meant by that. Like, it just really caught me as like, wouldn't have expected to hear him say that.
I wasn't here for that, but is that the one where Mevis hits the long field goal? Like,
Yeah, to force overtime, and then they lost in overtime,
yeah.
I think, on an interception.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you because when you first popped up this question from Mike, where he says, "I think this could be like the Tennessee game where Drake really wants to make a statement," I was thinking this would be that game. I didn't really know why. Yes, your contact makes sense, but I
It,
mean, I
but
guess.
it, but the thing is, it kind of doesn't to me.
Here's the only thing I say: he had a chance to kneel the ball, and he still went to score last week. I don't know why, and that's not really making a statement. it's really just about pouring it on. He doesn't seem like a foot off the gas type of guy at this moment. So I don't know. Could be maybe in a situation like that, but I don't know. Like you said, I don't know why this is more important. A non-conference game, so this also I don't know why it
Yeah,
matters.
it just really, I don't know. I want to ask him because it really surprised me. Logan's wanting to know about the Bill C tweet about the offense being super efficient but not explosive. I put this up on the screen to say, Logan, go read my 10 thoughts from this morning. I wrote a lot about that this morning, and I retweeted Bill because he and I agree. Jarod just saw this, man. Appreciate the super chat. Appreciate you always being with us and doing that. Let me see if we've got anything else. Tad wants to know if Brett Norfleet is back. I don't think so this
Yeah,
week.
I think
We don't know. We'll get it. Well, I say we'll get an update tomorrow. We won't get an update tomorrow.
they'll tell us. Well, the SEC has this new policy, and
Yeah, but
we'll
the
talk.
thing is, that's for
It doesn't
SEC
even work.
only
Yeah, it
games.
doesn't even work this week. So yeah, someone else will likely tweet where he's at or where he's going to be on Saturday. Even
Yeah,
though we,
just follow Pete Thamel on Friday afternoon, guys. He'll
yeah,
know.
we'll ask though and see where he is. But I think if he misses this week, I think he'll definitely be back by Vandy.
See, T. Rice brings up a good point. He rests through Vandy. I could see that because
Rest
you've
through
got the
Vandy.
bye. Yes, because you've got the bye
Oh
after
yeah,
Vandy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And look, again, you should be able to win these two games without Brett Norfleet.
Also 100% true. So yeah, you don't.
So yeah,
Yeah, you don't have to.
yeah. If you can do that, you give him the bye week. He gets a full month off. He's as healthy as he can possibly be. I mean, we don't really even know what's wrong, but
And on top of that, again, Jordan Harris, Tyler Stevens, it's not like they've been super remarkable, but I think just the floor of the tight end room compared to the last year before that, it's better where I'm we're not noticing them. They make their little catches every now and then, but I'm not saying whiffed block or holding after holding or whatever the situation is. And if they can continue to do that in Brett Norfleet's absence, they'll be fine.
Yep, agree. So look, I think we're kind of on the same page here. We won't do our predictions till later in the week, but I think I don't know the last. I mean, did the line surprise you at all? 16.5.
Um, I don't know if it's surprising me. I don't know if I would have put it there, but it doesn't surprise me, if that makes sense.
It was a little higher than I thought. I had said I thought it'd be like 12.5. I think that tells us that Vegas thinks the Florida State win was more about Florida State than it was about Boston College.
I do have Missouri winning around like by 13, 14 point range, more so than 16 plus. So
Yeah.
okay, we're really on the same page then as far as that.
I'll say this: Missouri's played two games and they've covered in the final 90 seconds of both games. So, keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Appreciate you hanging out tonight. If you were here with us live, like, comment, subscribe, do all those things. If you're listening on the podcast, just leave a good comment there. Share it all on social media. Most importantly, get in touch with our guy James Carlton at State Farm, CarltonInsurance.net. He's got a Facebook page, facebook.com/Carlton Insurance, and you can call him at 314-961-4800. When you do that, make sure to tell him you heard about it on the PowerMizzou.com podcast on State of the Tigers. He's going to make a donation to NIL. Everybody's going to win, and we'll be happy. So thanks. Talk to you later in the week.